Hi, listeners. Welcome back to Progress Over Perfection. Today, I sat down with our CEO advisor, John Hrastar, someone who's been advising Bob and me and Evans for over a decade. John has spent years as a CEO, business owner, and interim executive, and now works primarily as an advisor to company owners on building transferable enterprise value. He's a founding member of the Exit Planning Exchange, DC chapter, and a founding partner of the Greater Washington Family Business Alliance. He's also the one person I call when I need someone to tell me that one thing I'm not quite ready to hear. A lot of what John and I have been talking about lately is AI, which I know everybody else is also talking about. But we've been specifically talking about the gap between studying it, playing with it, piloting it, and actually using it. So if you've been wondering why your organization has plenty of AI working groups, lots of pilots, but no real movement, this episode is for you. We get into how to think about which parts of the work AI should take on, which parts need to stay human, and which parts disappear entirely. John is also going to walk us through 3 concrete things any federal leader can do starting on Monday morning to move from activity to actual progress. And we'll close with the one question I really want his answer to. What separates those leaders who actually transform their organizations from the ones who just keep talking about it? On that note, let's get into it. I know you and I have talked about, AI, like work falls into like one of 3 different categories. There's what AI can do on its own, work that requires, human input, at least it's in some way, and then what disappears entirely once AI is involved. And if those aren't quite the right buckets, feel free to fix them. But I think that framing, is still useful, no matter what sector you're in, the private sector and the federal sector, for leaders to start thinking about, like, going back to the outcomes and what it is you're trying to do and where you think it's going to provide the most value. Does those 3 buckets work?
Yes, yeah, they're exactly right. Glad you remembered from when I told you however long,
Yeah.
however long ago we had that conversation.
Somebody might have written it down. I don't know.
Yeah, it was probably a transcriber.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's one of those mindset shift things. Once you get a sense of what AI can do, that lots of work is being fractured in a way that is hard to understand, partly just by habit. Well, I have to do it this way because I've always done it that way. Well, why'd you always do it that way? Well, because thus and such. Well, thus and such no longer exists as a constraint. So that one bucket, what disappears when AI is now involved. Things like coordination and updates and whatnot, where you're passing data back and forth and making sure this person, that person, the other person are all on the same page, like literally on the same page. And it does that. You don't have to do that. It's interesting and sometimes frightening for people to understand how much of their work is in the highly valuable human kind of work versus everything else. I'll give you an example. Again, not exactly pertinent in the government space. Just had a conversation with a business owner who told a customer, hey, 80% of what I used to charge you for, you can now do by yourself. Now, the first time a business owner hears that, it's like, oh my God, there goes 80% of my revenue. No, 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 no. Now, what's possible is that business owner can say the 80% of the stuff that AI can do, AI should do, which now lets me do 20% times 5 of the high value stuff that can't be done by AI. I'll take that deal any day because that's the high value stuff that I can charge 10, 20 times more for than the AI grunt work that I had to blend into the engagement, like whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, very different value propositions. And it's a big change.
Yeah, and I think it, I mean, outside of the profit side of it, I think it, that approach and the 3 buckets hold, like which what you said for the federal sector, right?
Okay.
It's and it might be. I mean, in the first couple of episodes, I've talked about with my guests about how many jobs the federal government shed, and and that means like the federal leaders that maybe they weren't leaders last year, or maybe now they're even higher level leader because the entire, like for one of our clients, over half of the program management structure took some version of the DRP or just retired, and they are literally having to do more with less. And so, you know, 80/20 Pareto principle aside, like to me, it's going to be really valuable for them to start thinking about like, okay, what are these things where I either used to have another person doing this, a junior person, or I had a contractor I could bring in to do these things. And now as I'm starting to understand what AI can do for me, there's some of those things I I don't need to outsource to a contractor, for example, and I can just have an agent and do those kinds of things. And so to me, it is still useful. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
It is useful. One thing, maybe a little bit ahead of this discussion, is yes, you have to do a lot of things, and you need to make sure that you make the proper decision. Again, since I'm a private sector guy, I'll give you a private sector example. Klarna outsourced or AIified, whatever the word is. I don't know. Someone will come up with something. Their call center support. They said, "Oh, AI can, have these conversations." In fact, I was having an AI conversation just minutes before we got on this.
Okay.
It wasn't a very smart agent, got to tell you, but some of them are actually amazing. Sidebar. So anyway, and so Klarna does this. Lo and behold, they save, I don't know, $30 million a year, $60 million a year. I forget what the number was, but it was a big number. It's like, oh my gosh, woohoo, we're great. And then what happened is other metrics in their company tanked because
Huh.
it wasn't just about can we make these calls shorter? Can we solve the problem in less time? Can we get an agent to do something? Yes, 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 as far as it goes. But then they lost all of the customer feedback and the input and the goodwill and the opportunities to upsell
Uh,
and everything because they optimized for the wrong thing. Going back to what's the real operational impact that this organization wants to achieve. And just because AI can do something, make sure it's doing the right something.
right.
Because you can optimize for one thing, but if that's actually at odds with the commander's intent, I forget which branch of the military where I stole that, but the organization's intent, where are we going, the big D direction, if you know my 4D model.
Hmm.
Got to keep in line with that. And that's a human thing.
Right.
You can't outsource your strategic thinking to AI, even though it looks like you can type in a few things and then get a strategic plan.
Right.
No.
Yeah, no, I love that. Like, where did this come from? Oh, right. Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's one of those basic things of as you're learning to use it, realizing that you need to read it and not just put it on a slide. But I'm sure everyone's made that
Yeah,
kind
that
of a
too.
mistake. Yeah, so I want to so anyway, yeah, I think it's still useful to think about like as a leader is working on defining where they're going to get the most real operational impact and understanding which, how the work maybe falls into those three buckets. It still makes a lot of sense for them. So I want to shift for a second and share a story that I've shared with you before, but I want our listeners to hear it. So at Evans, one of the ways that we've been helping people understand how AI works and almost modeling it for them rather than saying, here, go use it, is we had some all hands meetings where we broke our company into several teams and gave them a couple different challenges. One was related to understanding some things that our business development team does, which is kind of less relevant for this episode. But and the second one was, we had two different sets of groups, and one was our consultants that work with our clients, and we gave them the challenges. Like, think about a challenge your customer has, and come up with some kind of a way to modernize that, and that like automation using some kind of technology and or leverage AI. And most of the groups chose AI, and they came up with solutions that were pretty good for their client. We looked at whether they were something that could be shared across, outside of their existing client base, and a lot of them, fell short on that front. And so, well, and then the second group was our internal folks, our HR, our finance team, our administration team, marketing, and included BD. And we said, okay, if you were going to automate something that you do, where do you think some of the key project processes are? And came up with a list of 31 things, and our internal folks did. And we were trying to figure out how do we rank them and which should be a priority. Did the whole typical like kind of consulting thing and came up with a ranked list that was based on complexity and ease of implementation or whatnot. And And then I talked to you and you said, what are you doing? And I said, well, that's what we always do. And you're like, okay, wait a second. Why aren't you just telling those people if they want to try to do it, they should do it? And so I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So I went back to our controller and I told her like, well, you should have this guy who suggested this, this template or tool for our project managers to use to do it. She said, okay. And then our next one-on-one, she said, when you told me to go ask person X to do this, he had already done it. And I was like, that's awesome. And I've been trying to tell everybody that story, and now everybody that's listening has heard it. But it was one of those things where I kind of realized that it was like this guy did the work and built the tool. He wasn't waiting for permission. He understood what we were trying to do. The message we're trying to send from the top resonated with him, I guess. And it was I don't know, I felt like we unlocked something that was there, at least for a portion of our team. I've been trying to repeat that story because it's, we don't rest our folks. It's like kind of one of these things about innovation. You want people to try things, right? Experiment, for like come up with ideas and see where they can go with them. And I think that's a lot, there's an ability for that to be a lot more powerful with AI now because, like you said, it can do so many things that we don't expect it can do. So it took a while to get through that story, but I wanted to get your perspective on how that type of an approach is beneficial, to use when we're implementing AI.
Yeah, it reminds me of, again, don't remember who said this, but now with AI, everyone is a manager, everyone is a coder. Meaning that if you start to think about AI, going back to the tell it to do things, don't just ask it questions. If you start to think about it as a rather capable junior employee, which is for a lot of jobs in a lot of organizations, not too far off. Sometimes it can be downright expert, but stick for now with a capable junior employee. Then yes, everyone is a manager, and I say coder because at a certain level of abstraction, coding is just saying, oh, I have to do steps A through Z on this thing at this time. That's just an algorithm. Yeah, it's code. You just tell whoever.
Right.
I kind of like Codex for coding things, but again, not getting into the technical details. It's just you can tell it in language, English, to build that thing, and then you have this thing, and now you just push a button, and you have a skill or a plugin or whatever that'll do that. And you don't need to have coding expertise or software engineering. Now, if you're going to release something into the wild, out into the public, or anything that touches, sensitive data, or real world, or customers, or different level. But if we're talking about internal business processes, again, small, contained, low risk, not going out into the world, used by an internal team. Yes, at a certain level, of course, you can do that. It's possible now. And what's surprising is I am finding, I've seen this now over and over, enough to say it's a thing. And I just put a thing on LinkedIn about this. People that you wouldn't expect are the ones who pop up and do that thing without anyone asking. And then you look around, it's like, oh, didn't expect that from that person. That's
100%
great.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's something that, well, you don't worry about finding the person. What you worry about is creating the environment where that can happen, where that is more likely to happen. So it's, again, going back to, commander's intent, the understanding of the organization's goals, real operational impact, making sure people have the tools, the training, the opportunity, know that there's this expectation that we're moving in this direction, that this is a tool that you're going to use. It's not an objective, it's a tool. Some concrete opportunities, there you sort of seeded the ground with, hey, here's this list of stuff, and bet you more than $1 that person that built that thing, probably it was very low on their enjoyment of my job list. This thing that they had to do is like, oh, if I can automate this off of my plate, I'll take 2 hours on the weekend and get that done. So there's a confluence of things that when they come together, yes, you'll get people really moving.
Yeah, well, it was a surprise, and that's nothing against this person because I'd noticed that they before that had a bias for action, right? Or maybe someone like that was probably more apt to try something out than people who don't maybe aren't that way as much. But one way I talked about it, I went to their team meeting and I was shared, hey, it's very cool that you did that. I was told that he wasn't the only one, like somebody else, on the
Even
team
better.
that did have a little bit of had taken programming as a side thing in college. Had already automated one of the processes they had with, and these are finance and accounting folks that were struggling with getting with like creating tools for our client delivery folks, right? To provide them the information they needed to do to make sure the invoices were right, right? There's always a lot of back and forth. And it's like if we can create templates, we can create some of these tools and build some automation into these, what are now manual processes. Then that'll, like it'll help them, it'll help us, and they'll feel like we're actually, providing a value-added service as opposed to just pestering them about like what code to charge this to. And anyway, it's like to me, it's been really good, and it's created that cross-functional discussion in a way that I mean, it existed, but it's given our team, both the internal and the external facing folks, an opportunity to work together to fix some things that they don't love to blame each other, but they know like, well, they're asking me for this, and I don't know what to provide them, and whatever. It just cuts through that stuff, and it's been really enlightening. And I know there's similar things that are going on in the government. Like I'm not as focused on the client's service sector, the client sector as much as other folks in our organization. But I think there's still some lessons or some application of that approach, like we've been talking about, that can be used in the federal sector.
Yeah. Well, those are good examples because they're self-contained, they're very algorithmic, the data are generally clean, very bounded rules and regulations, and you got the contract that tells you what the terms are, and an invoice has to look a certain way, and numbers are numbers. It's a lot easier to deal with stuff like that than, fuzzy things, customer satisfaction, whatever.
Right.
So there's that. And it also, your examples also highlight the cross collaboration thing you mentioned, also highlights okay, great. Now we can get AI agent over here to do this thing and AI agent over there. And now how do they interface? And there's this whole underneath technology infrastructure where agents have to work together and collaborate. And again, you got to have the overall human input about what are we trying to accomplish, where are the guardrails, what's an agent allowed to do, how do we know what the permissions are in security, and what does good look like, what does done look like, and on and on and on. So it forces that clarity. And you talked, so now we're 2 out of 3. So agency has gotten this buzz lately, the bias for action, clarity of communication, disagreeability. Why do we have to do it this way? Just because we always does? No, not. And so that is a profile of a type of person now that you can actually aim your organization to find, and you'll find the kind of people that are going to move you forward are not necessarily who you were looking for before. So I could go on for 2 hours about that, but
all right, so let's I think let's get to, we're getting towards the end of our time I usually spend with our listeners here, and I want to come back to like you like to do, and I want to make sure we do, is making this concrete for our listeners. So if I'm a federal leader and I'm facing some challenge of getting my team, however big that is, hundreds, thousands, dozens of people, what are the 3 things that I can do, on starting Monday, tomorrow, whatever, to actually move the needle?
A couple things. One, look at the job and how it's fractured into those 3 buckets, as you said. So find me here and I'll send you a prompt how to do that, or call Jack and he'll give you a variation of that. And it will put people through an exercise. You sit down with chatbot of your choice. It's not, I use Claude for that, but it could actually be anything. And in an interview, a structured interview, everyone will go through and answer questions about their job, their tasks, their goals, their schedule, their meetings, everything. And then get an assessment. X% of your work is high value human work that you have to hold on to because no one else can do it. X% can be completely offloaded to AI. And then that other X% in the middle that disappears once AI is involved. And so partly you get the data. In a large organization with similar roles, you'll also get some interesting patterns. You can collate those data and see, oh, well, all of my people in job type X, sort out this way. And in job type Y, they sort out in a different way. So, organizational leader altitude, you're seeing some big picture things that that help you make larger decisions. And then all the way down to the individual person. Now, a couple things will happen when, person XYZ goes through that exercise. One is some of them will be shocked at two
I
things,
was.
actually. What, yeah. They'll be shocked at, oh my gosh, this thing's talking to me like it's a person. And
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of people don't have the experience about how powerful AI is in interacting and understanding and digesting and, accumulating, like all that. So that's thing one. And then they'll also be shocked by, oh my gosh, that's how much of my job can disappear.
Right.
Now, before you have people do this, it's worth letting people know that do it yourself first before you tell anyone to do it. So you have the experience.
Right.
It's worth letting people know we're not doing this to hire people. We're doing this so that you, the human, can do more of what you, the human, are uniquely valuable at doing. And we rely on you for that. And so we want to maximize your value and get rid of the stuff that you probably don't like to do anyway.
Right.
So you do need some messaging around that because, yeah, it is genuinely shocking for people. Certain jobs more than others, not all are created equal, different, et cetera. So yes, a lot of variability. So that would be thing one. Thing two, so that was a very small picture. Thing two, again, I'm going to go back to big picture, back to the clarity thing, back to the commander's intent, back to the big D direction. Where are we going as an organization? Probably you have some place, some mission statement or whatever. That's got to be dusted off and clarified and put into a form that is so clear that it can't be misunderstood. I say that having listened to, I have no idea how many of these things, some of which are good and some of which are confusing and some of which are useless and most of which no one can recite if you tapped them on the shoulder at their cubicle and said, what's our mission? So, I can't see any of you, but you know who you are. So the overall that, the real operational impact, what are we trying to accomplish, et cetera, et cetera. And then thirdly, I'd go back and start to get particular about how do we create the environment so that people understand where we're going, they have the tools, they have the training, they know the intent, we're setting the expectations. If they need that, seeding like we talked about with Jack's people, there's some place they can, start to get some traction. Oh, this is an opportunity for me to get something off my plate that I don't like to do. Or, it's okay to experiment with some of this stuff, and here's a way maybe to do it. It's probably worth offering some kind of education. Anthropic really recently released all of their education for free. And even if you don't use Claude, I mean, lots of it, the more advanced stuff is all Claude specific. But the early things are like basic AI fluency, which a lot of people really don't understand. The extent to which AI can do something, the extent to which you can tell it to do something instead of just use it as a better Google, that type of thing. So, small, medium, large. Be very particular about, what does this job now look like, and how can we break that up and become more productive, more efficient, et cetera. Big picture, where are we going as an organization, real operational impact, commander's intent, all of that. And then make sure that you have the environment where the people, know they're supported, have the tools, have a direction. That's the little D direction in the 4D model. And then give them some traction and manage. You said three, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
It's actually a long list.
Right.
Many things to do.
Yeah, a lot of people are ending their time on the treadmill and probably want to go into something else at this point if they listen to a podcast when I do. So yeah, I mean one of the a thing I'll add one. I know I could add to your point a fair number more, but I find that our folks, and I'm sure federal leaders are in the same bucket, are waiting for somebody to come down from the mountaintop or wherever and say, here's the perfect set of guidance or the policy that's going to explain to you exactly how you can, what you can and can't do. And here's the training you need to take, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you'll be able to do these things. And it doesn't work that way. that, it is, your concrete steps and the things that you laid out, make sure you're clear on direction. You give them enough guidance, like the guardrails, to move forward. You say what we value based on, like real operational impact, or like the updated, more meaningful mission statement, those kinds of things. That's enough for you to give people the, like, okay, I've given you the direction I'm going to do. I'm not going to be prescriptive about this because it's not the right way to start using AI. Let's keep talking as we start using it, and do some of those other things we talked about. But I feel like if you're waiting, if you're a leader, no matter where you are in the private or public sector, and you're waiting for that perfect set of directions, it's not going to help you when it gets here.
Yeah. Yeah. You give people the goal. Here's the goal. And use all the tools at your disposal to get there. Again, AI is not an objective, it's a tool. And, the right kind of goal, structured properly, measured adequately, managed, the way management should be done with, having people accomplish goals and being accountable and so on and so forth. That should be enough of the impetus to get people moving.
Right. Okay. So we got a little bit of a different question I'm going to end with, but if I'm, you've worked with Bob and me and our founder before us, for over 10 years, and you've worked with lots of other organizations, clearly, and you've seen companies that, or organizations, go through a transition, and either they make it or they don't, right? And some it may take longer than others, but like, what's the tell on that leader? Like, if I'm thinking about leadership development angle of this, like, what's the thing that tells you whether they're going to move or whether you're just going to keep talking about it? And I'd just be interested to see, like, because to me, this is a little bit of a challenge to our listeners to suggest they emulate this.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any kind of transition, it's the do something concrete. Going back to the bias for action, going back to the not so much planning, don't wait for the, perfect description of how to do X, Y, and Z. Start small, experiment, innovate, learn as you go, and start. I mean, really, and especially now, with on the AI topic, there's so many places to start, which on the one hand is kind of overwhelming. I mean, my list of use case possibilities now is pages and pages, and I'll never get to all of them, and that's
Right.
fine. Back to the prioritization and so on. But really, it's the get off the dime, start doing something. I mean, the only way anything happens is somebody does something by a certain time. And sometimes, there has to be a goal, and then, teeth behind them to make sure that someone gets off the dime and to do something. So, the goal and the clarity and all the tools and the permission to act. And then Jack's laughing because he's seen my diagram.
Yeah. The teeth.
So I'll send that to you if you want as well. Find me here.
Right.
So it's really it gets back now. Some are faster, some are slower. Some succeed more or less in between, whatever. But you just can't get there unless you actually start steering the ocean liner, maybe only a degree here or there or whatever. Different scenarios require different things, can change, at different speeds. I mean, I'll give you one more analogy. So when electricity started in the Industrial Revolution, it took like a decade before it really started transforming factories. Because at first, one big steam engine, one big shaft that went through the factory, and then belts off of that for all the machines. Okay, well, we can replace the one big steam engine with a big electric motor, but that doesn't really change anything, except our wood bill. We're not burning logs anymore for the okay, but then it took 10 years, 9, somebody said, to put an electric motor onto every machine. That changed everything. Now, here in AI, electrons don't weigh that much. We can move them here or there. And so things can happen much more rapidly. So I've been through, changes in the history of what I've been doing with various types of technology and finance. And, like I said, computer software that I had to write all by myself, one line at a time. Here, things can change overnight. again, humans are not accustomed to dealing with exponential change at
Right.
this speed, at this, we're just not. Nothing personal, doesn't mean, you're a better or worse leader. It's like human brains just can't. So
Right.
other discussion we're not going to get into. But anyway, long rambling answer to Jack, your short question. Do something. Like,
Do something. Yeah.
really start doing something. We're going here. We're changing direction. Here's how we're going to do it. We're this kind of organization that leverages this tool. And yes, learning along the way, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on one at a time.
Right. Right. Well, awesome, John. I really want to thank you for joining me today. It's been, I mean, I talked to you a lot, so I knew the conversation would be really valuable. You've got a lot of insight that we Bob and I use on a weekly basis, and I'm happy that you've shared it with me and my listeners. And I'd say listeners, like if you didn't hear it, John just said it one last time. The gap between like studying AI and figure out what it can do and using AI, like you can't. This is moving so fast, you can't learn everything about it. So kind of get off your, what, and make a decision to use it and get your people to use it. And we've laid out several ways you can do that. But I will say, like, you do have to start with a little push sometimes, and making sure that you give people permission to make mistakes. This is all about employing their courage and their curiosity. And they're going to learn how this thing called AI can help them do your job and help not only them, but help you and your organization. All right, so John, you referred to it a couple of times, but you've got this QR code. Does that help people if they want to continue a conversation with you, how they reach you?
Sure, that'll be my LinkedIn. If you want to read down here, that's my email. Feel free to ping me either place. I'll send you the prompt for the job dissection. I'll send you the crappy drawing about everything you need to know in management in 4 minutes with my little sketch. I'll say whatever else I said. I sent it. Remind me, and I'll send it to you.
Yep.
So yes, glad to connect with people further. This is a fascinating conversation. So yes, it will not be over anytime soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks, John. Thanks for being here. And listeners, thanks for listening. And we'll talk to you next time.